CHALICE, Siam Storm 2, A Cambodian Adventure. Written by Robert A. Webster. Narrated by Robert A. Webster. Prologue. The telephone ringing brought Detective Inspector Crinigan out of his daydream. "Hello, Detective Inspector Crinigan, Scotland Yard," he announced. "Hello, Detective. My name is Dr. Timothy Clark, and I am the coroner for the British Embassy in Cambodia. We seem to have a mystery here." "How can I help, Dr. Clark?" said the detective, his thoughts now fully focused onto the conversation. Dr. Clark explained. "A body was found a few weeks ago in one of the shallow dry wells in a recess in the main temple at Sao Prom, which is about 1 kilometre away from one of Cambodia's main tourist sites, Angkor Thom. A tour guide and party of tourists found the body after the guide decided to frighten the party. He took them off the usual route and into the dark back recesses. However, it backfired when he shone his torch into the well and saw the body. We are having difficulty with identifying the corpse. All we really know from the autopsy is the man had been brain dead for about a week. He wasn't carrying any form of identification, and he was only dressed in a flimsy hospital gown. But the nearest hospital is 12 kilometres away, and they have had no foreigners admitted in the past few weeks and none been reported missing. We kept the body on ice for about a fortnight to try to work out the puzzle and identify him, but so far we have had no success in doing either. We had a few people come forward when we put the photograph in the Cambodia Daily, who reported seeing this individual around Phnom Penh several weeks ago, and said he was an Englishman called Nick, a tourist from Brighton. Clark then went on to ask, "I was wondering if I could send you blood and DNA samples taken from the body and dental x-rays, along with photographs and fingerprints to see if you could positively identify him." "Yes, of course," said Crinigan after listening with great interest, and enquired, "How did he die?" "That's the mystery," said Clark. "The corpse only appears brain dead, and we don't know how. It appears he had some kind of fright that caused a berry aneurysm, which subsequently burst, but there are some other major anomalies we cannot fathom out, and the facilities here aren't great. We've done all we can at this stage. I'll send you the report and you can see what I mean. It's incredible, but I don't want to say too much on the phone." "What do you mean by only brain dead?" enquired a now confused detective. "That's one thing I don't want to discuss on the telephone," repeated Clark. "I understand," said Crinigan. "Send what you have to my office and I will see to it." "Thanks," said Clark. "I will dispatch them immediately and make arrangements for repatriating the body." "Could you send the corpse to our coroner's office so we can investigate further?" Crinigan requested, his detective juices now tingling with anticipation. At last, something to get his teeth into. Clark thanked the detective, hung up the phone and wrote on the top of a small package, "New Scotland Yard, Broadway, London, SW1H OBG, for detention of Detective Inspector Donald Crinigan, Head of Special Projects Investigation Unit." Detective Inspector Donald Crinigan was born in Dublin. He had followed in the family tradition and joined the police straight from school. He went on to join the Metropolitan Police and moved to London, where he became a homicide detective. Due to his fastidious nature and thorough detective work, he rapidly moved up the ranks. Now, after 18 years with the Met, at 53 years of age, he was bored with the police force. He had 2 grown-up sons, both in the police, and an ex-wife who he still kept in contact with. His Irish accent had all but gone. Unless he got angry, then a string of Irish obscenities could be heard echoing around the corridors of New Scotland Yard. His subordinates knew he were in deep shit when he would come out of his office, point to the offending individual, and with a broad Irish twang shout, "Johnson, come here, you little bollocks." Nowadays the only thing he got to investigate was dead yardies and drug dealers. He was now very bored with being a policeman and wanted to do something different. "I'm sick of these bollockses getting away with murder because we didn't describe in detail what their farts smelt like," he used to moan to his colleagues. "Bloody red tape. Maybe this case will be different. It certainly sounds intriguing," he thought. He swung around in his chair and gazed out of his office window, which overlooked St. James's Park. In the morgue at Phnom Penh's Royal Ratanak Hospital, a corpse lay on a post-mortem table. Around it stood bemused men from the Cambodian coroner's office and Dr. Timothy Clark. Having just got off the phone to Detective Crinigan, he stood and looked at the post-mortem corpse. "This will baffle them in London," he thought. "It certainly mystified me. I will keep up to date with this strange case." Orderlies came in and swathed the body. Timothy signed the order to have the corpse and all tissue and organ samples sent to England. He left the hospital and headed to the Frog and Parrot, a small bar situated on the banks of the Tonle Sap River. He would treat himself to a well-deserved beer and see if the owner, Steve, could assist him, as he knew most of the happenings around Phnom Penh. Chapter 1. "I'm going in, Squadron Leader. Bandits at 12 o'clock high," said Stu in a well-spoken English accent from the annals of a World War fighter race. His head then went down towards a familiar black triangle, with his tongue out ready to please Dal. He was stopped midway down by a slap across his ears. "Don't yap, just work," exclaimed the perturbed but horny Dal. Stu continued on to Dal's moist pink chalice and tasted the nectar. Now on the first day back of his third visit to the land he now called home, he was pleasing the woman that he now knew as the love of his life. Spock was also getting up to similar antics in the adjacent room at the Sawadee Hotel, with his little angel Moo, also happy to be back in Thailand with the woman who we now endearingly called Little Shit. It was now May, and the lads had saved the money for the third visit to Thailand. They had previously spent a fortnight there during March, but it didn't seem as magical or adventurous as their first visit, and they had almost missed their flight out due to having to get Nick some medical attention at the airport. Both Stu and Spock had mellowed since they'd been going to Thailand. Spock had even been kind to Chunky, Stu's faithful old boxer bitch, and had willingly shared his bars of chocolate with the bemused animal, who previously had to steal them off his table. Stu's mum Pearl had seen her son turn into a right gooey Jessie, who spoke constantly about Dow and how he wanted to bring her to meet her. "You'll love her, Mum," Stu said, and despite the fact Dow could hardly speak English, Stu convinced his mum they could sit and chat all day and compare treasures, as Stu referred to the ornament that Pon had given him. The carved flawless ruby that had been kept in Pearl's treasure box, as she used to fondly refer to the small wooden box made by Stu in woodwork class when he was 12. It had become a handy home for all the junk that Stu had given his mum over the years. "We'll bring her over then, son." "Can't get a bloody visa," Stu would grumble. "Too difficult, and we haven't been together long enough, but Spock and I will try again next time." They tried to contact Nick several times by telephone, but they had only managed to speak to his sister, who, when she realised who it was, became very nervous and agitated. One time when Stu announced, "It's Stu here," "Is he there?" Stu was certain that he heard a panicked yelp in the background, followed by a sound of wood breaking and a groan of pain. However, he put this down to the television. Stu and Spock decided not to contact Nick again and thought they might run into him in Pattaya. Nick, however, had other plans, and after Stu's phone call, when he subsequently fell off the kitchen stool and cracked his head on his sister's oven, he decided that Pattaya was too dangerous, so he therefore decided to go somewhere different. He had friends who had visited Cambodia in the past and said that they had had a great time, so he decided to try there and booked a flight to Phnom Penh, the capital city. Back in Pattaya, now shagged and showered, Stu, Spock, Dow and Moo decided they should go out and have a bite to eat. They met in the reception of the Sawadee Hotel and Stu announced, "Tonight, girls, we eat steak." They'd heard about a small restaurant located at the top of Walking Street, which had the reputation of serving the best Kobe steaks in Thailand, and, after reading about what a Kobe steak was, and the usual price elsewhere in the world, they decided to splash out 450 baht and try some. They left the hotel, got onto a BART bus and travelled around the one-way system, alighting at the bottom of Walking Street. Walking Street is a large street closed off to traffic. On either side there are large bars, discos and go-go bars, and the most concentration of entertainment establishments in Pattaya. They just entered the street when Spock noticed a large complex filled with small bars. At its centre stood a boxing ring, where two Muay Thai fighters were exchanging blows. "Shall we come and have a look after we're finished eating, matey?" said Spock. "Good idea," agreed Stu. They continued walking towards the restaurant and something in one of the shops caught Spock's eye. "Hang on a minute," he said, and went into the shop, and returned several minutes later, much to the bemusement of the three others. He was wearing a hat which looked something like soldiers wore for jungle warfare. "I've been looking for one of these for ages," he said. "You can put the sides up or down." Spock removed the hat, folded one side up and popped in the press stud, and then replacing it on his head cheerily announced, "Errol Flynn, what do you think?" Dal, Moo and Stewie all agreed he looked an absolute twat. Undaunted, Spock mumbled, "Well, I like it," and he sauntered off in the direction of the restaurant. The other three followed far behind, so nobody would think they were with the twat in the hat. They entered Tranquility, a small but plush restaurant, and were led to a small 4-seat table and sat down. Spock sat down and removed his hat as the waiter came over. "Right," says Stu, "we'll start with 2 beers and 2 fruit-based drinks for the ladies." "Cola," announced Dow, and Moo ordered a beer. Spock and Stu ordered 2 Kobe steaks with Rockford cheese, and as usual the girls wanted to eat rice. However, when their meals came, Dow tried the delicious steak and ordered a plate for her and Moo to share. The lads agreed it was the best steak they had ever tasted, plump, juicy and served just how they liked it. Now fed and happy, they wandered back along Walking Street and went into the boxing bars. They positioned themselves at a small bar directly in front of the ring and ordered 3 beers and a wine cooler, and then settled down to watch the boxing. After 30 minutes, the ring announcer asked the audience if anybody would like to try their luck against a Thai boxer. Moo volunteered Spock, who looked confused, but not wanting to embarrass himself, decided to give it a try. He removed his daft hat and handed it to Moo for safekeeping. He entered the ring to a roaring cheer, mainly from Stu, Dow and Moo. Spock went to the centre of the ring and faced a small Thai boxer. "They want me to fight this toothpick," thought Spock. They'd given Spock the largest boxing gloves they had, but they were still too small for his large clubbing maulers. He squeezed into them and the bell sounded to start the fight. Toothpick Man became like a small whirling dervish as he rounded on Spock and rained down high kicks, elbows and fists against Spock's chest, which was about as high as he could reach. Spock, shaken by this flurry, tried a wild swing, which the fighter easily avoided, and punched Spock in his gut, bringing a gasp to Spock and another sound familiar with his usual trick. Again Spock swung wildly, but the Thai moved to his right and moved behind Spock. This move was a terrible mistake, as the Thai man's face came level with Spock's arse. A large hair-blowing methane gas deposit erupted from Spock's sphincter, full in the face of the horrified toothpick. The fighter got a face full of this deadly mixture. He coughed and spluttered in a vain attempt to expel this foul odour. Spock swung around and brought his fist down like a hammer onto the head of the Thai. The stunned boxer looked at Spock, smiled and then fell face down, unconscious. A loud cheer came up from all the foreigners present. The Thai ring announcer and trainer rushed into the ring to check on the fallen and cyanosed fighter. They herded Spock, who now stomped around the ring in a victory march, out of the ring. He returned to his seat and recovered his hat from Moo. The trainer led his still dazed fighter out of the ring, shouting obscenities at Spock in Thai. Moo shouted and screamed back at him and then turned to Spock. "Man speak no good, say you cheat." Stu, amused by all this, turned to his old friend and said, "Cheese and sing a beer, mate?" "Yep," replied Spock, "lethal mix." And to prove a point, Spock let rip again. "Nasty," grimaced Stu, getting a whiff. Dow and Moo, also getting a nostril full, got off their seats and started to move away. "Go take a dump," said an unimpressed Moo as she headed off around the other side of the bar. Still amused, Stu turned to Spock. "Moo's English seems to be getting better, mate." "Yep," said Spock. "You should hear what else I've been teaching her." "I can guess," replied Stu as the two lads carried on nonchalantly drinking their beer. The four returned to the hotel around 1 a.m. and, after replenishing their beer, whiskey and the girls' Listerine mouthwash supplies, decided to have an early night and plan what to do the next day. Dow woke Stu early the next morning. "Somebody knock on door." "What?" said Stu, still half asleep. "Somebody knock on door," repeated Dow. Stu got out of bed, slipped on his shorts and grumbled under his breath. If it's a bloody cleaner screeching, "Clean loom," there would be an ass-kicking coming in the vicinity of room 114. There came another knock. "Wait, stupid, I'm coming," growled Stu as he swung open the door. His face turned from anger to a large smile and he chuckled. "Hello, mate," he said. "What brings you here?" He looked at his watch, scowled and then growled, "At 6:30 in the morning." Chapter 2. Professor Norman Rumble sat in his easy chair listening to halts through the headphones of his iPod. He stared again at the clock, which he had been doing now for the past few hours. His gaze fell upon a framed photograph which hung on the wall. Soon, he thought, and at last the world will give us the recognition we deserve. It would be good to get out of here and live a normal life, instead of living like a mole. He stared again at the black and white photograph of himself as a young man alongside an older woman, both smiling and holding microscopes. Rumble looked around his office at other photographs on his wall. Many were of a younger Norman with a pretty olive-brown skinned lady with brown, round, sparkling eyes, and a young boy of similar complexion but with deep blue eyes that resembled Rumble's. His eyes flitted to other photographs in the room that showed the same people but at different times. One photograph showed the young boy as a man in academic robes holding a diploma in computer science. Rumble smiled with pride when he saw this photograph of his son, and with tears welling up in his eyes he looked at the photograph of just the woman and said aloud, "Sorry, my darling, I was just too late." He wiped tears from his eyes and continued, "But I promise that soon we will be back together again." The concerto reached its climax on the iPod as the door burst open. "Norm," said an agitated Professor Boren again. Norman immediately removed his headset and asked, "Is the process complete?" Yes, the process is complete, but you'd better come and take a look. Why? Said Rumble. What's the matter, old friend? Please, just come and look, repeated Ngem. The two professors walked down the brightly lit corridor in silence. They entered an adjoining corridor and walked past a glass-screened room. Rumble stared into the large room, where a man lay on the bed in the fetal position, with his back turned away from the window. Inside the room, bitmap machines, infusers, ventilators, scanners and other machines beeped and lights flashed intermittently. Several orderlies in the room started to take away stained sheets and clean what appeared to be a large rubber electric blanket. The blanket incorporated thousands of needles which coated the underside. Strands of fibre optic cables led to some of the machines, and at the side of the bed a woman spoke to the unresponsive figure. Rumble and Ngem entered the room, which had the air of Highclere and the smell of maternity theatre post-birth, with handless water music softly playing in the background. The woman, still speaking to the figure in ancient Indian Pali language, fell silent when the two men entered. "He doesn't appear to understand," said the woman in Khmer. The man on the bed then turned to face the professors. "What the hell?" said a shocked Rumble in English. The figure started to sit up as if he understood what the professor had said. He rubbed his eyes and looked around the room. Bewildered and confused, he lay back down and fell asleep. The two professors stared at the figure in a blissful slumber. "What's happened, Norm?" said Ngem. "I don't know, old friend," replied Norman. "Shall we wake him?" asked Ngem. "Maybe he has the answer." "No, let him sleep for now. We will have plenty of time for that later. Now, if you'll excuse me." Rumble left the room, leaving a puzzled Bohr and Ngem to sit and check the monitors. Norman headed back down the corridor and into his large office. He went over to his desk, removed a keychain from around his neck, unlocked a drawer and removed a small object which he studied for a moment. "You have a lot more to tell us than we thought," he uttered at the object. "What other secrets do you hold, I wonder?" He picked up his mobile phone off the desk, found the number in his contact list and dialed. "Hello, Norm," said a voice on the other end. "Tai, we have a problem, and it looks like we would be requiring your services again. Could you come down and meet me?" said Rumble. "Sure," said the voice on the other end. "I'll be there in a couple of hours." "No rush today. In the morning we'll be fine," said the professor. "Heh, it is morning, Norm. That's the problem with living underground. You don't know night from day," chuckled Tai. Norm laughed. "I'll see you soon, son," said Rumble as he hung up the phone and picked up the object again, still confused. "Now we are all sons of bitches," he thought, quoting from Oppenheimer's assistant after he created the A-bomb. Professor Norman Rumble was born in Auckland, New Zealand in 1938. His parents had been wealthy landowners. He developed a passion for science and chemistry from an early age. At 14 years old, his parents and teachers, realising he was a genius, sent him to Cambridge University in England. He came to the attention of Rosalind Franklin, a brilliant and innovative scientist, whose work in X-ray diffraction for sequencing and pairing DNA and the connection between DNA and RNA had sent the scientific world into a buzz in the early 1950s. Franklin took the young 17-year-old Rumble under her wing and acquired him a research post alongside her in the John Randall Department at King's College London. Norman excelled in the field of genetic research and over several years came into contact with many top scientists within the same field. He and Rosalind discovered forms A and B of DNA, and they developed an ingenious method to separate the two forms, which provided the first DNA crystals pure enough to yield interpretable diffraction patterns, and the all-important missing piece of the puzzle, the secret of heredity itself. Two other scientists in particular stood out to Rumble, James Watson and Francis Crick, both brilliant in their field, and Rumble had many discussions with the pair about the project that he and Rosalind were currently working on. These discussions went on long into the small hours of the morning and joined in by the new prodigy on the team, Ian Woolmott, who, although slightly younger than Norman, enjoyed each other's theories, especially about cloning and the possibility of one day cloning a human being. They became great friends. Watson and Crick published a paper in the mid-50s. When Norman read it, he knew it to be the information he had shared with the two scientists about his and Rosalind's research. Rosalind Franklin never knew how Watson and Crick had gotten access to her research, and wasn't bitter about their deceit. However, Rumble was. Rosalind Franklin died of cancer in 1958, and the 20-year-old Rumble went into his shell. His mentor and best friend had gone, so he threw himself deeper into his research of the human genome. Rumble's parents both died in a car crash in 1960, the same year that he was awarded a professorship at the King's College. Norman returned to New Zealand and sold his family's holdings, which made him a very wealthy man. Norman wasn't interested in money, he dedicated his life to science. While in New Zealand he met another scientist, an archaeologist named Boran Ngem, a Cambodian national who came to New Zealand to research the possible connection between the ancient Moriori tribes and the ancient Khmers. Boran and his archaeological team had found crude wall paintings and faded parchments in an inner chamber of Angkor Wat in a recently discovered catacomb. One wall painting depicted two men stood together. One man appeared darker skinned and wore clothing that bore striking similarities to the traditional clothing and decorations worn by the modern-day hill tribes, the ones who lived in Ratanakiri province, northern Cambodia. The other man on the drawing appeared to be a native and adorned in tribal decoration. This they assumed to be Moriori, as the figure held what appeared to be a dead kiwi bird, which he appeared to be handing over to the tribesman. There was also a large drawing of a lizard, which they identified as a tatura, a species indigenous to New Zealand. Also, one parchment showed pictures of boats painted with symbols. These strange markings had also been found painted on the walls in Angkor Thom and Angkor Wat. Morioris were the first known people to have inhabited New Zealand and its islands, before the Maori tribes came from Polynesia and ate them all. This puzzle left the Cambodian team who discovered the catacombs in 1960 stunned. Could Cambodians have sailed to New Zealand as early as the 12th century and bring back the Moriori, or did the Moriori arrive in Cambodia to escape being washed down with a fine claret? It was widely believed that Morioris could make sailboats and navigate. This quandary intrigued Boran and, at his own expense, he funded an expedition to the South Islands of New Zealand. The fruits of his labour paid off by the find of clay skulls of dogs, cats and birds, dating back to about 650 years, pre-Maori, but unfortunately he found no sign of a Khmer connection there. Norman and Boran first met at a luncheon party, and they became friends, and when Boran had gone back to Cambodia, he and Rumble kept in contact. The year was 1962, and one day as Norman worked in his large recently purchased laboratory, he heard something on the radio, which made his blood boil. Watson and Crick had just received the Nobel Prize for Physiology and Medicine on their groundbreaking work in the discovery of DNA. Although Franklin had been briefly mentioned for her input, she would not receive the award, as it could not be given posthumously. Rumble was never mentioned. It would be several years before Boran and Norman would meet up again, and give Rumble the opportunity to exact his revenge. Footnote: the immense ruins of both Angkor Wat and Angkor Thom are the main tourist attractions of Cambodia. Angkor Thom was the last and most enduring capital city of the Khmer Empire. It was established in the late 12th century by King Jayavarman VII. It covers an area of 9 square kilometres, within which are located several monuments from earlier eras, as well as those established by Jayavarman and his successors. At the centre of the city is Jayavarman's state temple, the Bayon, with other major sites clustered around the Victory Square. Ta Prohm is a modern name for a temple at Angkor. Built in the Bayon style, largely in the late 12th and early 13th centuries, and originally called Raja Vihara. Located approximately 1 kilometre east of Angkor Thom and on the southern edge of East Barai, near Tomlibati. It was also founded by King Jayavarman VII, but as a Mahayana Buddhist monastery and university. Unlike most Angkorian temples, Ta Prohm had been left in much the same condition in which it was found. The photogenic and atmospheric combination of trees grown out of the ruins and the jungle surroundings ensures privacy and only very few brave visitors. Angkor Wat is a central feature of Angkor, UNESCO World Heritage Site containing the magnificent remains of the Khmer civilization. Angkor Wat's rising series of 5 towers culminates in an impressive central tower that symbolises mythical Mount Meru. Thousands of feet of wall space are covered with intricate carvings depicting scenes from mythology. Angkor Wat is soon to be classed as one of the 7th wonders of the world. Sorry about this. I hope you enjoyed this little snippet. Don't despair. If you want to listen to the book in its entirety, you can either buy it at cdbaby.com, or if you don't want to pay for it, just go to my website at www.buddhasauthor.com, go to my contact page, send me your email address, and I'll send you the whole version in the Dropbox, because that's the kind and generous person that I am, and I'm even prepared to forfeit a pair of dapper new flip-flops for your total enjoyment. Thank you all very much for listening.